Okay, guys, so a couple of days ago, I put up a video as an episode one of styling forms in Bricks Builder. And the example I was using is a WS form step form. So a form with tabs, which we styled the tabs to look more like a stepper with rounded numbers on them. The intention was to have the second video where I show you how to actually style all the form elements, so the inputs, the checkboxes, all that sort of stuff. But more feedback that I got, or more questions I got, were about how do you do this with the native Bricks form, or there's more people using the Bricksforge Pro form with bricks. There didn't seem to be much interest in the WS form, so I assume that it's more common that people would use either bricks forms or the bricks pro form with bricks. Personally, I use WS form for everything because it's so flexible. There's so much you can do with it that I don't bother using anything else. But I need to pare that back and I guess create an example of what most people might be using. So what I've done is in the editor here, I've put a left column here, which is a standard bricks form. So I've just gone into forms and added this element, the form element, to there, and just added a couple of options, so a checkbox and a radio set. And that is all that has been done with the left-hand form. On the right-hand side, I've inserted a Bricksforge Pro form, which is this one here. And it does it very differently to how Bricks does. So it is a lot more powerful than the built-in Bricks form, has a lot more options and settings. So I guess if you had Pro forms, you probably wouldn't use the Bricks form. Initially what I was going to say was maybe we can style it so that it styles both the same using the same classes, but that's not going to make sense because I would say that with the built-in bricks form, there is one element and you have to style all of the sub elements. So all of the, the inputs, the buttons, all that sort of stuff using your CSS selector paths down to those. With the Pro form, it actually uses the newer version with the nested elements and outputs all of the inputs and buttons and everything as individual elements. So it's actually better, I think, because you can actually style these using BEM if you wish to. And I'll show you a quick one with that. I'm going to actually show you the styling of the bricks form. Then I'll quickly talk about how we would do that with the Pro form and how to be a little bit easier to target. So that's it. Let's start on the bricks form up here. So the first thing we're going to look at is the labels. And you'll see by default, we've got these capitalized labels with a small font size. Maybe you like that, maybe you don't. Let's fix that up. So we're going to add a class. I've named this element here AB bricks form. So I'm going to make my class that. And if you have advanced thema or automatic CSS, you can actually use their BEM creators to name these very quickly by right clicking or just clicking on the BEM creator. But I'm going to have to manually type this in because I'm assuming you haven't got either of those. And by the way, if you are seeing all these shortcuts down the right hand side and left hand side, that is advanced thema. You don't need it for this, but it is definitely a useful tool to have, or set of tools to have, I should say. So basically we've created a bricks form. Now we're going to have a look and save that and have a look at the front end and use my F12 to bring up my Chrome DevTools. We're going to have a look at the label. There's my label selected there. And then we're on the right hand side, we're going to have a look at the CSS that's applied to it from the default bricks CSS. And what we see here, if we point our mouse at the rule, we see we've got a specificity of 001, which is nice and low. So it's basically because we've got a label element specified there, it's a 1. The BRXE form is inside of a where selector, which means it has 0 specificity. So what where does is it means do not add anything inside my parentheses to the specificity. So it makes it very weak, which is really good if you want to override these things. So I think they've done a great job of using the where there. It makes it easy for us to override. So all we have to do is have one class. So in our center number that's your classes and attributes. So if we have a specificity of 0, 1, it's going to override this rule. So let's do that. So all we need to override there is the label. So heading back to the builder, going into our CSS, and again, that's just a shortcut to get to our CSS. I'm going to do a root, so R tab, that gives us our root, which is referring to our AB Bricksform in this case. And then we're going to do a space, and then we're going to do label. Okay, because we only need, because it's so weak specificity in here, we only need to override with one class and one element, and we're good to go. So I'm going to change that to, I think it's got a text transform on this. We're going to remove that. And we're going to set that to unset. And now we've dropped our capitalization that is being applied by default. Let's set a color. I'm going to set that to my primary color. I'm using my own framework in Bricks using variables here. If you've got ACSS or core framework or your own, use your own variables or put in fixed values there, whatever you want. Okay, and we'll set the size. And I'm going to use my text. Maybe the text small. Should be just slightly bigger than what was already there. Okay, there's my label there. What you'll notice here is my labels above my inputs here have changed, but not above the checkbox and the radio buttons. So let's save this, have a look at the front end and see why. So these have changed, they haven't. Why is that? If we have a look at the label here, the message, it is a label element, which is what we're targeting. If we look at the label on our checkbox, it is a div with a class of label. I'm not sure why they did that. There may be a reason I'm just not aware of, but I'm not sure why they didn't make that a label, but we've got a class of label. And if we have a look at the CSS for it on the right hand side, we have a specificity of 0 to 0. Why? Because we've got our standard where, which is reducing the specificity there, but we've got a form group and we've got a label class. We've got two classes, which is why we've got a specificity of 0 to 0. So we need to be more specific to override this one. Okay, so how do we do that? Let's go back to our class here. So we've got root label, and we want to use something that's really, really cool in CSS3, which we're going to use our selectors like is, has, and where. Okay, we're not going to use the where because that weakens the specificity. So we're going to say we're going to have is. We're going to do a colon is label. Okay, we see that we've still got that, or is what do we say? Dot label. But that doesn't give us enough specificity. Yes, it did actually. In the editor, it's actually changed that. Let's have a look here. With front end. So it did actually give us enough specificity. Let's see why. So we go to that checkbox there. 0 to 0. So we're quite lucky though, because 0 to 0, 0 to 0 there. What we're going to find here is that this, because they've got the same specificity, this may or may not work. It depends on which rule loads first. So when you have the same specificity, it's the last rule that loads that gets applied. So one overrides the other. So what we're going to do here is say we're going to make sure this works by increasing our specificity. Easiest way to do that is we're going to grab this BRXE form here. If we look up the DOM here at our form, where's our form? There it is. So we've got our AB Bricks form there. It's the same element that has the BRXE-form. So we can add that to this element selector to give it more specificity. So let's go back to our form here and just going to add our dot. No, not dot, perhaps didn't copy that properly. got to add our .brxe form to there. Why isn't that saving? Copying. So, okay, I'm going to try that again. Got something weird. I'm doing a Control C and it's not copying. I'll try copy, right click copy. There we go. So we've got the same specificity there. Sorry, same rule applying. We've just increased the specificity by adding an extra class. We have a look at that now and have a look at our checkbox label there. We can now see we have a specificity of 030. So we've got three classes. We've got the AB Bricks form, we've got the Bricksforge form, and we've got the .label. So we've got three of those. Whereas the rule that's being applied by Bricks has a specificity of 020. So it doesn't matter what order they load in now, this one's going to apply. So this is just a quick lesson in checking your specificity and making sure you don't end up with these comments that we see in the forums all the time where, hey, this looks right in the back end, but when I go to the front end, it doesn't look right. It will be your specificity and the order of loading, because in the back end, what's going to load is whatever you type in here, that loads last because it's doing it live. So even if this has a weaker specificity in the builder, it'll apply, but when you go to the front end, it won't apply because it's the wrong specificity. Okay, so that's that. Now we've done our labels there. We then also looking at these look, they also have a label. That's a label as well. So that's okay. We'll leave that as it is. We can override that or make the other one more specific if we want, so that it only targets the labels above these inputs. I'm okay with that, leaving that color as it is. In fact, no, I'm not. I'm going to target that differently. Let me go back to these and see that label is a form group label. And this label is an options wrapper label. Okay, so let's go to our labels. Okay, I'm going to add that class in there. So I'm going to grab our form group. No, because we've got a form group label and then we've got the options label in here, options wrapper label. So that's underneath it. So what we'll do is we'll override that color of that label separately. So what we're going to do is grab our options wrapper. Just paste that into here. So we're going to grab the same specificity there. Go to options wrapper, and we're going to go to label. See if this overrides. So what do we got there? We got 1, 2, 3, specificity of 3. That's okay because this is after that there. And we're going to set the color to be our color. We'll make it a neutral color. Make it neutral L1, that'll do. So we set our option there to a neutral L1. Maybe that's not enough. Make it just neutral. Go, that's okay. Maybe we make a D1. So we can see as we type in here, we can see that update happening with these labels here. So now we have overridden that in the back end. Let's check the front end. And we've actually, so even though these have are a label, we've overridden those for these option labels here. Okay. Now, what we're going to do now is start styling up these inputs. So let's have a look at an input. So if we look at a input there, there's no special classes on that. The only thing that identifies what this is that attribute there, the type equals text. So we're going to use that. Copy that. Go to there. I'm just going to maybe put a note here. Inputs. Maybe call that labels. So inputs. So we use square brackets for our attributes. Going to pinch our selector there and put that in there. So input form type equals text. We're just going to do this and then see what the specificity is, okay? And we're going to, what are we going to change here? So we'll change the border radius. Just set that to 0. We're going to change the background. And we're going to set that to, what do we set our background to? I'll do a neutral. Make it a L5. Border. Let's set that to none. Border bottom. We'll do 1 pixel. Oh, not border block. Set that to 1 px solid. Neutral. Let's do a, maybe just don't do neutral by itself, see what it looks like. There we go, it's a bit too dark. We'll make it a L2, maybe 3. There we go, it's just a slight color there. So there's our back end. I'm going to save that, have a look at the front end and see what that looks like. Okay, so it looks like we've got enough specificity there to make that work. If we have a look at it, there it is there. So here's our specificity. We've got a specificity of 030, so that is 2 classes and an attribute. And the Bricks one has specificity of 021. So we win because our center number is a 3. So as you go to the left in the specificity, it has more importance. So the most important to the left, medium importance in the middle, least importance on the right. Okay, so that's okay. I can see some weird spacing here, so I'm going to set that line height to 1. And now we've got equal spacing top and bottom. All right, now that is our input for text. Now the input for what's this? This is that's the text. I'm on the wrong one. Let's have a look at the next one. That's a type of email. So you have to go through and find which of these you use. Maybe put one element of each on the form when you're styling it up. So numbers, dates, whatever you want to put on there, phone, and then use all of those. So I'm going to grab the email. And what I'm going to do here is the old way of doing this is you actually just keep replicating these by putting a comma and then replicate that rule and then put the different types in there. A newer way of doing that is using is. So I'm just going to use a colon is. And with the is, what that does, you can say is either of these, is any one of these. Okay, so I'm saying whether it is a text or it's email. So this part applies, and then the is says and this or that. All right, so we applied it to our email and our name and our messages here. That's not an input at all. It is a text area. So we're going to add a text area to that. So we're going to put a comma text area. Now we're applying it to our text area. Okay. Save, check our front end. And we've got our name, email, and message. All got the same styling. Let's do some focus styles on here. And I'm going to show you some things that I do a little bit differently. That is, rather than creating lots of complex CSS rules, use some CSS variables that you override to make things easier. So I'm going to change my focus state on these by setting some variables. So I'm going to use the root. I'm going to actually rename or redo all of these variables here so you can see the importance of this. So what are we doing? Let's do our labels. Label color. Primary. Okay, label, font size, text S. Okay, what else do we apply to the label? That's all we did. So I'm going to grab that label color there. I'm going to put that on there. Okay, grab the font size. I'm going to put that on there. Okay, now we're going to do some pretty cool things here. What we're going to do is we're going to grab both of those. In fact, I'm going to do them individually, sorry. I'm going to grab a label color. And I'm going to add a modifier. So I'm going to do 2 dashes. I'm going to use the methodology that you use, BEM. BEM doesn't specify these naming for variables, but I like keeping it simple using the same thing. So I'm going to use the modifier syntax, so 2 dashes and focus. And what we're going to do is make that just black. Okay. And then we're going to do the same with the font size. Actually, we're going to leave that as it is. We don't want to change the font size on here. So label focus, and then we're going to add some other stuff in here for our inputs. Inputs, border. Yeah, it's going to be a tricky one. That's probably a shorthand way of doing this, but the way I've done this, I've got rid of the border and then I've added the these. So I'm just going to do the border bottom for here. I wouldn't suggest you do this. I think you probably want to do this as having a border for each side or using another shorthand for doing that. So I'm going to do input border bottom. We're going to do 1p. Actually, we'll pinch that we've got there. Okay, and then we're going to change the border bottom here. Okay, and what else have we got? We've got the background. And I think we've got that set there. We have. Copy that. We're going to grab our background and we're going to put that there. Okay, so a couple of simple things there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to copy that whole rule there for that variable. We're going to add our focus variation, and we're going to make that, we'll just make it primary. See what that looks like when we do it. Just change the neutrals to primary. And we'll do the same with this one. Just make it primary. All right, now override. So we're going to call this, I'll put it here, focus. All right, so we're going to look at the same rule that we have for the input. So we're going to grab that rule there. Okay, and we're going to add, on the end of that, we're going to add a colon focus. And we're going to change the input border bottom to be the var input bottom focus. So we're going to change the, rather than go and change all of the CSS down here, we just override the variables. Background. Assume we haven't made typos here. That should actually work. So let's save that. Have a look at the front end. There we go. So we've got our border changing on focus, our background changing on focus. We want to get rid of that focus outline. So let's go to, on the focus, where's our focus state? So the first thing we do is outline none, because we're changing the state of it anyway, so it doesn't really need the outline, I think. There we go. So we've just affected the text input, the email input, and the text area. Pretty simple, right? So next thing we're going to do is look at the options, so the checkbox. So with checkboxes and radio inputs, when they're checked, they have a CSS state of checked. So if you do a colon checked, you can use that for CSS. But looking at these, what we want to do is we say when this checkbox is checked, we want the label to change state. But the label is not a child of input, so we need to treat that as a sibling. So we can't use the same method that we used for the variables previously, because if we change the variable value on this input, it's not going to apply to the label because the label is not a child, it's a sibling. So cascading style sheets, your variables cascade down the DOM. They don't cascade to the siblings, they cascade further down the DOM from an element. So if I applied a change to this li, my input and my label would see it, but if I changed to the input, my input will see it, but my label won't, because the label is not a child of input. So we have to treat this a little bit differently. We have to go up the DOM a little bit to check whether the checkbox is checked, so that we can change the variables to change the label state. Okay, so how do we do that? Let's go back. I'm going to grab this options wrapper here, and I'm going to go labels. Okay, I'm going to put another comment here. Checked labels, checked option. And I'll probably go back and revise these comments once I'm done too. So my options wrapper. So we need our standard specificity rule here. So the root BRXE form options wrapper. I'm going to do a space, and I'm going to put a dot has and then checked. Okay, so what we're saying here is that any of its elements below the option wrapper has a checked state, then we want to affect the label. Okay, so what I'm going to do is create some variables up here. So I'm going to put the label option. We'll do it the other way around. I'll do the option label. I'm just going to change the weight. Font weight of normal. And then we're going to do the same sort of thing up here, where we give it a modifier, and I'm going to call that -- checked and make it bold. All right, so that is that. And then we need to put a check state here. And you might want to reorder these once you've done. I'm just doing these so I can see the variables, and because it's such a small editor we got here, right? Okay, so we're going to do the same sort of thing here, except for we just need options wrapper has checked. Let's move that further up. Has checked. That there. Options wrapper has checked. We want to make our option label font weight equal our var option label font weight checked. So we're going to swap it over. So if our options wrapper has an element underneath it that is checked, that doesn't work for me. No, that's not going to work. Let's go back here, because I think that's going to. Let's have a look at our checkbox here. What do we got there? No. We're going to have to target the allies first. Otherwise, we're going to target all these. So as we work through these, we figure them out. So if I do the options wrapper has checked, so it's going to be if any one of these has checked, then they're all going to change state, which is not what we want. So we need to do the li. We need to go further down the DOM to the li. So let's go further down the DOM here. Option, okay, I'm going to do option li has checked, so it's only targeting the li. So we're going down to, so we've got the options label, then that li, we're only changing that variable for that li, not for the whole options wrapper. Otherwise, we're going to target all of them. Yeah, Okay, so that's that. Then we're going to set that. Now let's change the option label to that. Where is our option label? There it is there. So we're going to put a font weight on that of save that. Nope, we're not working. Why aren't we working? Okay. Options wrapper label. Let's have a look at it. Test. Go there. Options wrapper label, the li has checked. Li has checked. Okay, ProForm options wrapper, ally. Something I forgot. So it's got to be, when you're doing the has, it's you can't have a space there, because the has is saying if that ally has a sub element, so further down the DOM with that, then apply it. So you can't have a space there with the has. That's what I did wrong. Okay, here we go. There we go. So now it goes bold. Okay, so as we check it, it goes bold. So this is, we have to work through and target and figure out, how are you targeting these things? How are you using your specificity? It ends up with, if you do it this way, what you end up with a settings block up here. If you want to change it, you just change these variables. What do you change your focus state? Change anything that's got focus on it. All right. So I'm going to make that, for example, my focus. I'm going to make that 2 pixel, and we're just going to make that 2 pixel primary. Okay, just change that one variable there. Have a look at the front end. Now we've got a 2 pixel primary border bottom. So super, super simple. I don't have to go figuring out, oh, where in the CSS did I set that, and what when the focus state changes, blah, blah, blah. It's just change your variables up here that make sense to you because you've named them properly. And the way you go. So I'm going to leave it at that, because the rest of it's pretty much straightforward. You do your buttons in the same way. Any other inputs that you put on here, you just need to work through those, figure out what they are. You then have a class that you've created. So if you add a new Bricksform to the page or to the editor, you add that class to it. All of these styles are going to apply to it across the entire site. So that's the idea of doing that. Now, you can do, so that's the Bricksform done, I think. You can do the same thing with Bricksforge. We can actually go through, add a class there, find all the elements and target those. But because it uses this nesting, which is the, I think when the Bricks guys created the Bricksform, that was prior to them having nested elements. So this is probably a hangover from before they had that functionality. The Bricks Pro forms from Bricksforge use the nested element feature for all the elements. So we could actually change that, and we could call that an AB ProForm, for example, okay? And I'm going to create a class on here. In fact, I'm going to use save myself some time. I'm going to use a advanced theme feature here. I'm even going to add a checkbox there. So a checkbox here. So we've got a checkbox on our ProForm. There we go. We'll maybe move that up a little bit. Looks like we need a wrapper for that first. So we need a checkbox wrapper. And inside that wrapper, it automatically gives us a checkbox. It does. So there we go. So this is the beauty of the ProForm. Okay. What I would do with this, I would give that a name in Advanced Theme. What I can do is right click on that, use my class converter, create classes, bang, done. So I've got my AB ProForm created. AB ProForm text, AB ProForm email, right? So here's where it's really beautiful. We go to our AB ProForm and go to our CSS. And we can target all of those individually. And even in AT, there's even a feature here. We go, click on that and you, where are they? That's not it. There's a feature here somewhere. So many features that they've been, oh, there we go. Add component selectors. It was the top one here. Click on that and it didn't work. Why didn't you work? Let me try that again. Go back to our ProForm. Here's our ProForm. Click on that. Add component selectors, and oh, must be a bug. Okay, so you can't do that if it's not working, but what you can do, let's say I want to target that text box only, just the text input. It's just root __ text. Oops. And then we'll set the background to blue. Color white. Okay, so we've actually targeted that. Looks like an entire thing. So it's actually got the label on there as well. So you can't do that. It probably would be that and then input. There you go. So we target the input inside there and then we type in there. Anyway, so that's, I would say you can do exactly the same method for styling up this form as we did with the bricks form. But you also have the added advantage of using BEM with these if you want to, because it's using the nested elements. You can target all of those elements just using BEM naming conventions. There are looking like some of these elements, or probably all of them, will have some subcomponents. Actually, let's have a look at that. So if I look at there, so here is our ProForm's text field. So inside that we have a wrapper, then we've got a label, then we've got an input. So we have to target the label and the input inside those wrappers to target those. But still, it's a lot easier than having to figure out the class paths and try and make them as specific as possible. It's a lot easier to do it this way, I think, if that's what you want to do. But anyway, so that is that. I'm not going to go through the whole styling of this ProForm because I think it's pretty obvious. If you know how to style the bricks form, you know how to style the ProForm, but you have the added advantage of using BEM if you wish to. I'm going to leave it at that. If you like this kind of thing, hit the subscribe, hit the like. Thanks, guys.